Hello and welcome. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. There's a small group, but that's good. Joshua Roy's my name, and Access World Seminars is a small project that I put together in 2015, and the whole purpose of this was to create a little project that teaches empowerment. One psychologist says that most people walk around in a trance, and that trance is a trance of disempowerment. And so this was most people, and it was interesting that he said that most people. So empowerment is not a way that many people live. It's a way that many more of us could live. But then you ask yourself, what is empowerment? Well, we're here tonight to discuss this and to discover how we can be more empowered with ourselves. And one of the ways that we can be more empowered is by dealing with our self-sabotaging behaviours. 6 ways that we self-sabotage that we'll go through tonight, and we'll start to look at some of your behaviours, so you'll be able to look at them for yourself and decide for yourself how you're self-sabotaging your life. In 2015, I attended a seminar that changed my life. I'd attended many other seminars before this, but in 2015 something happened. Something happened in my mind that set my trajectory off in a new direction. And as a result of that, I began running these meetup groups. I began teaching and running seminars and workshops and helping other people to get some of the changes that I'd had. And they were real changes. Like for example, within 5 weeks after this seminar, I'd lost 12 kilograms of weight, and I got myself into really good shape. I was doing better than I was doing when in my 20s, as far as physically, as far as being able to run further, being able to do more push-ups, those types of things. So I actually, physically at 39, was fitter and healthier than I was in my 20s. And I thought, this is amazing. And then I saw progress in the other areas of my life, my relationship, my work and career life, and then I just started surging, I guess, in all these other areas. And I realised and came to understand that our mind is the thing that can help us move forward or hold us back. And it's how we use it. But one thing that I found out or discovered is that your mind did not come with an instruction manual. And so here we are on the planet, and we're learning and growing. We're going through the education system that's been put out in front of us, laid out by the government, whoever else has organised that. And our education system is pretty good, but what it doesn't teach is a lot of things. What it doesn't teach is, for example, how to take full emotional control of your life. Because what I discovered in 2015, when I was 39 years old, was that every action or every behaviour comes about as a result of an emotion or a feeling. And so all behaviour is state dependent. Our state of mind and emotion creates behaviour. And so if I wanted to change my behaviour and thereby get different results, it wasn't about changing my behaviour. See, a lot of psychology is about, well, we're doing one behaviour, let's do a different behaviour. What I decided that I needed to what I discovered was that when we go deeper, when we start to look at the cause of behaviour, when we start to look at the emotions underlying behaviour, and we change those emotions, those values, discover a purpose, shift our identity, that our behaviour automatically changes. And this was exciting for me because I had behaviours that I didn't want to do. Who's got behaviours that they don't want to do? Yeah. I think all of us, right? And I worked out how to do that. And when I started getting results, I started teaching other people and sharing these ideas, and that's why I'm here and that's why I do what I do. Looks like I've got a whole bunch of latecomers. The idea with learning, if we really want to learn something at the deepest level, the way I think about it is, first of all, you learn it for yourself, and once you learn it, then you apply it. You do something with it. It's no good learning a new concept and not actually doing it, because you can learn something and think you know it, but if you don't do it, you don't know it. So you've actually got to put it into practice. You apply it. After you apply it, the best thing that I love to do next, if you really want to make it sink deep into your mind, you go teach somebody. You share it with a friend, you share it with your partner, you share it with a work colleague, you share it with children that you work with. So if you share the idea, what you're doing is the grooves are going deeper. I don't know if there's any scriptorians here, but the Apostle Paul in the Bible, he said this. He said, "When thou teachest another, teachest thou not thyself." Now that's old English, but what he was saying was, when you teach somebody, you're teaching yourself. You're reinforcing the principle in your own mind and your own heart. It's a great thing to do. So teach as often as you can. Share the ideas. It goes deeper. The grooves go deeper into your mind and you remember and retain the information much better. And some of that comes from taking that big, long look into the distance. But often we don't do that. We're not trained to do that. My wife does that. She's always looking 10, 20 years ahead. But me, I'm thinking about, what am I eating for lunch? So my wife's been working with me and slowly training me to take a longer look into the future. Sometimes we self-sabotage because we don't look out far enough. And then there's other people that look too far out and they're in fairyland and they're not living in the now. Yeah, keep learning, keep applying, keep teaching, and just keep running that cycle. Learn, apply, teach. Learn. If you do that your whole life, you're constantly growing. And if you're growing, you're not dying. You're either growing or dying, one or the other. Have you noticed in life nothing's stagnant? Like you can't just get to a certain point of finance and just stop and everything's fine, or get to a certain point in your health and just stop. The minute you stop, you never plateau, you're always going backwards. Who finds that? Yeah, it's like that, isn't it? So it's this constant, never-ending growth. And we think that maybe I'll get to that point where I can just relax and everything will be perfect. No, there's no such point. It doesn't exist. So life is about growth. Who's had addictions in the past that linger? Yeah, I think we can all relate to that. And addictions are funny things. I do a whole addiction recovery program. I'll be doing it next month. I'll be sharing some of the ideas around that. But addiction's a very powerful thing. Addiction is so strong. They're always past addiction, but the final step is obviously relapse prevention. In fact, before we even work on the problem, there's 3 steps, even before you start dealing with the problem. So there's a pre-preparation stage. Then there's the preparation, then there's the contemplation stage, pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and then you actually deal with the addiction. Did you guys know that? A lot of people go, right, I'm going to deal with the addiction, and then they go to deal with the addiction, and guess what? They find out the addiction is looming over their head. It's so big, and they didn't realise. I remember years ago, I got on one of those suits. You know those suits that can stick you to the wall? You ever gone to a place like that and you run up and jump on this little trampoline and you stick on the wall and then you come down? Well, they had another activity where there was a bungee cord you tie to your back. Who's ever tried this? And you've got to run as fast as you can and there's a bell at the end you've got to touch. And the first time you go, you see other people do it and you think, yeah, I could do that. And the first time you do it, you get about 3/4 of the way there and you just go flying backwards because you didn't in your mind know how hard it would be. You see somebody else do something and you go, well, that looks easy. Who's had that experience? You look at somebody do something and you go, boy, they make that look easy. And then you go and do it and you realise, this is hard. Well, that's how I was on this bungee cord. And then I tried it a second time, and this time I got my mindset different. I said, no, I've got to put more effort. That wasn't enough. This time I got about 4/5 of the way and suddenly it just shot me back the other way. And I thought to myself, am I still not going hard enough? So then I started changing my strategy. I thought I've got to get lower. So I got down lower like a football scrum, and I'm going really low to the ground, still got pulled back. It took me about 8 times. And eventually I got it. I got this desire in me that I was going to get to the end no matter what. And I set my sight correctly. And often it's like that with addiction. Did you know the average relapse time for addiction is 7 times? So if somebody has an alcohol or a drug addiction or something else, it's 7 times. They think they've overcome it. And then they go back into it because they didn't set their sights correctly. They didn't recognise or realise how hard it was going to be. Who can relate to this? Yep. Yeah. And you don't even realise how hard it's going to be. And you go, I can do this. Or I love the naivety of youth. You know, you talk to a 21-year-old who's got a smoking or a drug addiction and they say, oh, I can give up any time. Well, can you? Can you go a week? Can you go a month? And you put them to the test and you realise that they don't even know how big or how giant this addiction is. So the only way I beat addiction or deal with addiction is this. You've got to do 2 things, or one of 2 things. You either outgrow the addiction or you shrink the addiction. They're the only 2 ways to beat it. So I decided to do both. And that's the way I teach with my program, is you've got to outgrow it. You've got to just go in a positive, powerful direction and give it everything you've got. It's like running to the end of that, that bungee cord game. It's like that. And everything you've got. You can't stop. You can't rest. You must continue surging forward. And at the same time, you've got to work with your mind to shrink the addiction's power and grasp on you. And when you do these 2 things together, you can let go of the addiction. Before we get too far, I want to tell you a story about a woman who I have seen and known for about 10 to 12 years. She's an older woman, and last time I saw her was about 3 months ago, and she was walking through Brisbane City. And before I saw her, I smelt something, and it was a rather unpleasant smell. And as I walked closer, I noticed that it was this woman. She was walking towards me. She walked past me, and I looked around behind, and I saw that her pants were wet and she'd urinated, and I saw the urine had gone down, and the inside of her trousers were kind of stained and wet. And I just thought, how sad is this? She was drunk at the time. Her eyes were rolling. She wasn't making sense of her surrounding, and she was just wandering aimlessly through the city. Now, I've known this woman for about 12 years because she's frequented watch houses, and I've done a lot of work in watch houses over the time. If you know what a watch house is, that's where it's the halfway house between the street and the prison. Okay, if you've gone into a watch house, you probably didn't have a good experience because they're not really fun or nice places. But she's been in watch houses many times. Interesting to find out that she was actually once a bank manager, a very affluent person. Very successful in what she was doing. Something happened in her family. Something happened with her marriage and with her children, and suddenly they wanted nothing more to do with her, and her life fell apart. She turned to drinking on the weekends, and soon that became an everyday activity. And now it's got to the point where she's become quite a hopeless alcoholic, where she can't stay off the bottle, and her life has just degraded to the point where she stinks and she doesn't bathe or clothe herself properly. And she used to have jewellery all over her body. She used to have all these big chains and gold. She was actually quite wealthy, whereas now most of that's gone and she's left in this situation. And I thought, isn't that an interesting thing, just to see someone's life spiral down out of control? That's a really extreme example, but that's self-sabotage at the extreme level. There was a father and a son, and they went out on a fishing trip. And as they were out on this fishing trip, they were near a beach, and while the father was trying to catch the fish and was rather slow, the son decided to go and find crabs. He was very curious, and as he was looking around the beach, he saw these crabs running around. So he started digging up all these crabs, and he started putting them in the bucket. And after about half an hour or 40 minutes of this, the father came over, still no bites, hadn't caught any fish, so it wasn't a good day fishing, but he looked over and he saw that his son had about 20 crabs in the bucket. They were like all around the bucket. And it was quite interesting. As he stood there and watched this bucket full of crabs, he noticed that the crabs began climbing up the side of the wall of the bucket. But as soon as they got about halfway up or up near the top, another crab would reach up and grab them down and pull them down. And he saw this happen again. Another crab would get almost out to the top, and another crab reach up and pull it down. And so on and so forth. And this continued to happen over and over again. And he watched it for a number of minutes and thought, what a curious thing. And as he was watching that bucket and these crabs, he started thinking about the different people in his life. Congruence. If you've done much personal development, you would have heard this term, congruence. And you would have heard this one as well, incongruence. And if you've got a religious background, you would have heard the word hypocrisy, or being a hypocrite. So hypocrisy and incongruence are pretty much the same thing. Hypocrisy. If I can spell it right. So we've got incongruence or hypocrisy. So what we want in our life is congruence. And in order to get congruence, we need alignment of 4 things. And if we align those 4 things, we get congruence. We stop being a hypocrite. We stop having incongruence in our body. So if we look at self-sabotage, it's the incongruence that's happening inside you. So what are those 4 things? Well, the first one is our words. The second thing is our intentions. The third thing is our desires. And the fourth is our behaviour. So those 4 things. That's it. Do you want me to write those down? If you want those, I can say them again. I don't need to write them down. But just listen very carefully. They're our words. So the words is number 1. The next thing is your intention. Your intention. So remember we did the components of focus before? That's all part of your intention. Then there's your desires. The desires. And now we have righteous desires and not so right, unrighteous, you could say. Or you could say good desires and bad desires. Or you could say positive desires and negative desires. And so there's a whole area there in saying, well, what desires do I want to go towards? Isn't it true? Because we all have both. It's like those two wolves. There's an old Indian tale told where the Indian chief was sitting down and speaking to another man. And this young boy or young man had been in a fight with another man, and they were talking about behaviour. And this Indian chief said that each of us have two wolves in our shoulder. And the other man said, well, which wolf is going to win? Because he says they're fighting, they're at war with each other. There's, the good and the evil. If you've seen The Emperor's New Groove, that cartoon with Kronk, he's got those little one's an angel that pops up, and the other one's a devil that pops up, and he's got these two little, and there's this conversation that happens with himself. Oh, do I choose the right way, or do I choose? And he's got this conflict happening. So this Indian chief explained this, and he said, well, which wolf's going to win? And what the Indian chief said was very interesting. He said, it all depends which wolf you feed the most. So you've got to feed the right wolf. We've got these wolves on our shoulder, which one are you going to feed? And so when it comes to desires, it's choosing, well, what desires do I want? What do I really want? And then the last one is our behaviour. So there's four things. Now, if we can align all those things up, if we can have, speak words, speak with authenticity, speak with integrity, and then we have intentions to go and do it, but then we back up that intention with the desires that we have. We actually have these real desires. Our values are working for us, not against us. And then our behaviour resonates and is congruent with all those things, and that's when we have this. That's when we have this complete congruency. And that's what we want. Who thinks that would be a good thing to have? If you could be congruent. Absolutely. That's really what we're all striving for. And that's why, and life is difficult. Life is tough because we've got all of this unconscious programming. And most of this programming happened before you were 7 years of age. It's all happened in the imprint period of your youth. When you were a little child. Things that you saw, things that you heard, things that you felt, stories that you made up. Much of it wasn't even true. It's just stuff that you made up. As a little child making stories up in their mind as to what things mean. And the meaning we give it affects the quality of our life. But any time in our life, it doesn't matter how old we are, how young, how old, we can change it. And what we do is we go back and we start looking at the wiring, and we start shifting that wiring. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. But like anything worthwhile, it requires work and persistence. And one thing is for sure, no one can give you a belief in yourself or confidence. Only you can do that. And once you've got that belief or confidence, once you've got that congruency, then you go out and face new challenges, and this new self-image will support you. This new way you feel about yourself will support what you're doing, and you'll get results. And it's a very positive upward spiral. In stark contrast to this woman in the city who was on this negative spiral, down further and deeper into self-sabotage. You see, the high soul climbs the highway, and the low soul gropes the low. And in between are misty flats, the rest drift to and fro. But to every man there openeth a highway and a low, and every man decides the way his soul will go. And that applies for the women here too. Okay, we all decide, every day we decide where we're going to go. Which road which wolf are we going to feed? Here is, if we want to build our levels of self-worth, if we want to build our self-worth, then it's about making and keeping commitments to yourself, to others, and depending on your spiritual belief, to God. So when you make and keep commitments to yourself, to others, whether it be a friend or a colleague, somebody you work with, somebody you know, go and tell them, make a commitment to them. And carry through with the commitment. When you make and keep, then that's the important part, where you keep commitments. What happens is your self-worth increases. Your self-worth decreases when you let go of your commitments. When you say you're going to do it and you don't do it. When you think in your mind, oh, I'm going to do this later on today, but then when it gets there you go, oh, I really don't want to do it. You stop trusting yourself and your self-worth goes down. Everyone understand what I'm talking about? So when you make and keep commitments to yourself, your self-worth goes up. That's one of the solutions to self-sabotage. And if you're not going to carry through, don't make the commitment. Only start with small ways and things that you're definitely going to commit to. Like the commitment could be, I'm going to read for 30 minutes a day a self-help book. Or I'm going to watch, self-help programs on YouTube for, 30 minutes a day. Or I'm going to, something like, so you're into growth at the moment, into development. So pick something like that you can do and then commit to yourself, number one. Then find someone else you can commit to. Now this is why coaching works as well. Because coaching is all about helping people to increase their self-worth. You see, what you're doing is you're committing then to a coach. You pay the money, but they hold you to account. They've got a job. Their job is to help you get the results that you are after. And they will hold you to a level of commitment to ensure that you get what you're after. Otherwise, they're not very good coaches, right? That's what they do. But ultimately, it's you that does the coaching. But you're committing to somebody else, which gives you more self-worth. And with more self-worth, you get where you're going faster. And you're not self-sabotaging. Make sense? Sure. Coaches are invaluable.
Yes. What does N stand for?
What's that? Oh, we haven't got to N yet. We haven't got to I yet. So that's the first thing. Yeah. And then the other thing you can do is commit to God in some way. Or the universe, or your higher self, whatever you believe God to be. Make a commitment there as well. So it's you, others, and God. If you do all three, your self-worth goes up. You don't, self-worth goes down. That's only if failure is a bad thing. You could have a belief that failure is a learning process. You see, because there's two conditions in life. You win or you learn. That's it. There's nothing else. You win or you learn. So if you haven't won, you've just learned something. And if you look at life that way, instead of I won or I failed, because failure does have that negative connotation. What if you saw every failure as a potential learning experience? What if you reprogrammed your mind to think of winning or learning? But it's a choice. Like I've run a meetup group and I had one person come. What did I do? Well, we had a one-on-one discussion. And it was a great night. Did I fail? I could have gone away and moped and said, I'm just going to cancel. There's only one person here. Or we could just have the best discussion there could possibly be. Or if nobody turns up, and I've even decided I'll do that, if nobody turns up, I've got a video camera and I'll just go and do my seminar to the video camera and it'll be a great night and I will learn heaps. And I'll still win. You win or you learn. And so if we program ourselves to think that way, and the whole idea of this is to be empowered, to think of the most empowering way that you can live your life. And if it's always fear of failure, or if you see failure as being a very negative thing, then you're going to stop. You're not going to do things. You're not going to ask that girl out. You're not going to approach somebody. You're not going to open up a conversation. You're not going to... So it prevents you from doing all those things which could benefit your life. Whereas if you see everything as a learning experience, and suddenly you get knocked down a bit, you're like, ooh, I learned a lot from that. What did I learn? Go back and write your learnings. Learn from it. Go and do it again. That's it. So you win or you learn. Does that help? Okay. It's a new concept sometimes, hard to get your mind around. It's something we can practice. And if you did fail, go learn the skills. Let's say you approach someone and you got shut down. Maybe go to a communication course or go to a class where you learn, better ways to approach people. How to build rapport before you speak. You see, a lot of the mistake people make is they walk straight up to a person and begin talking, whereas you could be spending 10 minutes building rapport across the room. How do you build rapport across the room? Well, in my communication course, we teach it. We talk about body language, matching and mirror body language. We talk about unconscious communication, things that happen before you even open your mouth. So you begin matching and mirroring someone. People like people who are like who? Themselves. People don't like people who's not like them. So the more you can use your physiology the way they use it, if they speak like this with their hands, and you speak back to them with your hands, they go, I like this person. This person speaks my language. Or if you're a very quiet sort of person, and somebody comes up and has a nice quiet chat, you go, I like this person. Or someone's a real fast talker, and then you come back and you're a fast talker. People like people who are like them. So that way we learn the skills, we become very adaptable. It's very easy then to meet people because we start taking cues from them. And people say, well, isn't that manipulation? It's not manipulation. What you're doing is you're honouring that person. You're entering into their world, into their space. And I tell you what, it's a lot of fun when you really do. I mean, I do this stuff a lot, and it's fun. Especially when people yell. People yell at me, like at my job, they'll yell at me. Like, and I get angry and yell at me. And you know what I do? I get angry and yell back. And we just have this yelling match, and then suddenly, I just bring it down a notch. And often, because I've built rapport, they'll come down with me, and suddenly we're talking normally. You know, rather than one person yelling, everyone trying to calm them down, and you're missing each other. You're not together. Sometimes you build rapport, and it's worked. It's worked many times. I don't use it in every situation, but it's fun. It's fun doing that. You get to use a lot of energy, you get to be angry. You know, it's play angry. I sort of play act while I'm doing it, so it's more acting than actual anger. It's fun. There's a little poem that I'd like to share with you about this never give up concept, and it goes like this. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, when you want to smile, but you have to sigh. When care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. You see, life is queer with its twists and turns, and every one of us sometimes learns, and many a fellow turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. So don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You might succeed with another blow. Often the goal is nearer than it seems to a faint and faltering man. Often the struggle is given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late as the night slipped down how close he was to the silver crown. You see, success is failure turned inside out. Sorry, the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out. The silver tint on the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things go wrong that you must not quit. So that's a little poem called Don't Quit. So don't quit. So there's your solution. So if you want to overcome that self-sabotage behaviour, to revert to familiar in your life, and that familiarity is the same, it's repetition of what you currently got and you're happy with it, and there's no news of difference coming in. If you want to change that around, begin by building your self-worth. Okay, begin by making commitments to yourself. Get a coach if you want, or do something along those lines, or get somebody that you trust that you can say, hey, I'm going to do this. Can you just be a sounding board for me? Okay, work on your identity. Work on deciding who you are. Okay, I'm adventurous. Okay, so what if you had the identity, I'm adventurous? Yeah. How different would your life look?
Excellent.
Okay, so
Opposite.
There's an identity right there. So if you take that on, take that identity. Now in the training, we teach you how to install these things. So you can actually install the new identity into your mind, into your heart, into the cells of your body. Okay? And then never give up. And so that's the process.
I'm stronger at that bit, never give up.
Yeah, never give up. Okay. Never giving up at doing the same thing.
Yeah, that too.
That too?
Yeah. But in other areas, yeah.
Yeah, in another, okay.
Yeah,
but it'll only support your identity. So unless we shift this, how do we get this in the right place? With goal setting, there's a few ways we can do goals. If you always get what you want, then set big goals. Make them big, make them grandiose, because you always get what you want. If you never get what you want, start with some short-term goals and build up your self-worth that way. So it all depends on the person. Like everyone has a different level of goal-setting ability, or goal-setting and achievement ability. And so we've got to look at the individual, because everyone in this room will be different. And the other thing is, some people will have 3 goals and others will have 20 goals. You know, so even the goal levels and numbers is different. Okay, and some people are just overwhelmed with too many goals, and some people are underwhelmed with too few goals. So they need lots of goals to feel like they're really excelling. So everybody does goal setting differently. There's no one set technique for everybody. When we actually do the course, we actually do the work to repattern our mind around this idea of self-sabotage. So if there's a self-sabotaging behaviour you have that you'd like to get rid of, it's called the Ultimate Freedom Course. come along to that seminar. We'll take whatever self-sabotaging behaviour, we'll rip it out, we'll get rid of it, and we'll eliminate that from your life. Does that sound good? So that's the idea of it. There's a relationship course coming up. So if you want to find or increase the quality of your marriage, find that special someone interested in that, then you can sign up to that one. And there's another course next year, which is a 3-day seminar. And I think you'll find the prices for these are very, very reasonable in comparison to other seminars around, which you'll pay thousands of dollars. For example, there's a 6-day course that costs $6,000 for 6 days. I do 3 days, and it's around about the $400 or $500 mark. So it's a lot better than the competitors that are out there teaching seminars. The stuff works. I've had repeat customers that keep coming back and they say, this is great, it's changed my life, so all good.
Do you have credit card service?
Yeah, credit card here. So if you've got a credit card, I can put it on my phone, make your payment here and now and go for it. Otherwise, have a fantastic life.